Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here again, and I want to thank the Economic Times, too, for pulling off just magnificent sessions. It's a place where I can actually meet more global leaders here than many other different parts of the world. And what I wanted to do just over this next 15 minutes was try and help actually just give a bit of the context for what I think is the great topic that the Times and Rana, you've put together, which is the whole notion of the new economy and new rules. And the basic point that I want to make is that this is a time of phenomenal change. And for me personally, this is literally the last few days in my role. I've been doing this role for 9 years. And when I started this role, my view was you can't lead unless you have a sense of context. And the themes I thought that were changing the world have actually not changed over the last 9 years, the fundamental forces. But what's happened is they've intensified at a level that I couldn't imagine. And I want to walk through some of those because I think that's what's leading to a need for a new set of rules as we look ahead. And secondly, I think that while we're going through this time of phenomenal change and disruption, I'm an optimist. I think there's going to be a lot of new jobs, new businesses, innovation that's going to be required. Innovation will be critical, but inclusion will be as important as innovation. And in fact, we're going to have to do more invention on the inclusion than we've ever done before. And my final point will be is I think if there is any country that can show us how to do this, because it's going to be a phenomenal task to do it, it's India. And so I do believe that I can see $10 trillion on the planning horizon. I don't know whether it's 2030 or 2040, but the momentum's there. What I actually think is more exciting is the innovation that we're going to see in how we do business and how we do social sector. Because of the size and scale of where India is, it has to be done that way, and that's going to be good for the world. So that's basically the message that I want to go through. So let me talk a little bit about the global context. I mentioned before, I always think about what are the forces at work that you have to think about, and I think about more of the gravitational forces versus the volatility that we've seen over the last 9 years. And I think that there are four that are driving the world into a period of extraordinary disruption. The first, and again, India is very much in the center of all of these. The first is this massive economic power shift towards Asia. Clearly, India is right in the middle of that. But many people in the world underestimate the speed with which that change is going on. And one way I look at it is if you were to put the Earth on a flat piece of paper and try and balance it, right, as to where the center of gravity is in the GDP, in the year zero, it was actually roughly around Delhi. That's because of the significance of the Asian economy back in the year zero. It wasn't as large, obviously, as it was today, but it was significant. If you then look forward to about 1975, it moved to Iceland. That's sort of the gravity as North America and Europe came into the system. Still a strong weight from Asia. So it basically took 2,000 years to move towards Iceland. In the next 50 years, it's going to move back exactly to where it started in the year zero, but with a much more significant economy. So the scale of that transition, because it's a much more massive economy than it ever has been, and the speed is unprecedented. It's about 1,000 times bigger than the Industrial Revolution. So the future is now, and it's here. It's in this part of the world. And if there's only one number that you remember from what I say in my blathering up here, is this the following. There is going to be 2.4 billion new middle-class consumers coming into the world in the next 15 years, right up to 2030. 2 billion of those will be coming from this region, and the vast bulk will be coming from this country and where it is. This is a massive opportunity that we need to look at. And again, most of us in the West are underappreciating the speed and scale of that, and that has just continued to move, and it's urbanization that is driving that. The second force, which I actually think is accelerated even further over these 9 years, and I'm both excited and frightened by it, is technology. Technology is just moving at a pace we've never seen. I think we're in chapter 1 of a 100-chapter book, but if you think about what computing power has done, what the connectedness of things and people has done, and what big data has done, it is completely transforming everything. Everyone needs to think of themselves as a technology company. If I even think about the Catholic Church, the Pope has decided to establish a ethics committee on artificial intelligence. And I'm not a deep reader of the Bible. I don't think anything was written about artificial intelligence in the Catholic Church. But if you want to lead an organization, even if you're a religious organization, you better embrace technology in where it is. So every single one of us has to think about how it's transforming us. And the biggest implication for me of technology is speed. Every organization has to think about clock speed. How fast is the world moving, because it's disrupting all of us. And it's not just in mobile commerce, it's in energy storage, it's in material science, it's in every single aspect. We're now seeing technology being applied to science, to medicine. We're getting big changes on that side. So this is going to lead to very significant changes in the world. The third, which may be a weird thing to talk about here in India, but it's a global phenomenon, is the aging of the Earth. We are becoming a very old planet. We're going to have more people over the age of 65 than under the age of 14 in about 20 years from now, except in this country where you have this demographic dividend, and I think we should never underestimate that asset that was. We have to skill the group and make sure that they have jobs, but people are going to be crying not to have young talent. So let's make sure we use it. Japan has gone off the edge on that side. I come from Canada. It's the next fastest aging OECD country in the world. And what that means for a country like Canada is that our GDP growth rate is going to be cut in half just because of demographics. Doing nothing means we're going to have a lower drop. It's just the way it works, and it's a fundamental issue. And older people cost more money. Again, as I get older, I'm happy that we have more older people. I think wisdom and so forth is important, but old people cost more money in the systems, and that's going to require fundamental changes to healthcare that we've never seen before, how we work, lifelong learning. There's no way that we can retire at 65 anymore down the road in the future. This is going to change some basic conventions of how we work. So that's the third force that's there. And the fourth one, which is one that I want to talk about in terms of inclusion, is that with all of these changes that are going on, there is a search or yearning for a new societal deal. Because some people, a few people, are gaining from these changes that I've just talked about, but there's a lot of people that are not. And the challenge with that is that the people who are not gaining and not being able to participate are getting ticked off and upset, and they have visibility. And we know, for example, that 500 million people over the period of 2002 to 2017 saw a decrease in their actual household incomes as we move through it. And that causes concern. And technology is an increasing returns to scale game. Fewer people get more of the benefit as you go through it. And that's going to challenge us on some of the orthodoxies about how we think about distribution of wealth and how that moves through the system, because you can't keep assuming the same system is going to work unless you want to see a revolution occur. So everyone has to be thinking about where that is. We have automation, which is coming in faster than we think. We think that in most countries around the world, we're going to see at least 10% of the workforce have to have a completely new job in the next 10 years. Their job will be eliminated through automation. And I'm not a Luddite. Automation can help do many things. We've got, I think, many more future jobs than we have past jobs. The problem is you have to skill them, as Rana said before. If we don't skill people and reskill people, we're going to have a big problem, and it's moving faster than we've seen. And in previous technology disruptions, we had multiple generations to absorb the technology shift. This is going to happen in one generation as we move through it. And then we have the increasing geopolitical stability, and KPMG and Bill Thomas can talk. They've done a very good report on that, but I've never seen so much geopolitical stability. As was mentioned in Davos, I think the feeling was growth, 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 incredible bullishness, but at the same time, fragility like we've not seen before, and we go through it. So that's the context of what we're dealing with, which is a very turbulent, disruptive world. I'm an optimist. I think there are many, many opportunities. But if we don't begin to think about how we do things differently as organizations and as businesses, if I might point out the businesses in society, we're going to have a revolution as we move through it. And one of the people I read a lot, and you may think I'm bizarre when I say that, and some of you have probably heard of this fellow, E.O. Wilson, who wrote a book called The Social Conquest of Earth. E.O. Wilson's an entomologist, which means he studies ants. You'll say, well, why are you reading about someone who studies ants? Well, E.O. Wilson, his real passion is actually studying species that have been dominant over long, long periods of times in world history. And there are 4 species that have been dominant: ants, termites, bees, and humans. And the distinguishing feature of those species that are dominant over time is they're altruistic to each other, and they're intergenerational in what they do. I'm simplifying for an idiot like me to understand it, but that's why this fellow who studies ants has actually got some pretty profound views about where we are. And we're assuming that the current system that we have is going to work, and I'm suggesting to you it's not, because of the technology shifts that are going on, the disruptive shifts, and if we don't embrace the change and the people that are disrupted, then maybe we won't be moving through the system. And he had one quote which I love, which is, we have created a Star Wars civilization with Stone Age emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology, right? It's that sort of combination of where it is. And that's why we need to have innovation, and we need to have inclusiveness as we look ahead. And some of the areas that I worry about from the ant point of view, if I could say it, is we're becoming increasingly short-term. Many governments are just trying to get re-elected in a cycle when many of these changes take a long period. We're seeing the advent of quarterly capitalism as opposed to long-term capitalism, where people are focused on the quarter and not thinking about what they're building over time. We have more political gridlock in other parts of the world. We have declining voter turnout. There's a problem with the system that we're going to have to work on, and we need to fix it. It's not going to be fixed outside the system of where we are. And so let me just finish off then talking about India, because I'm bullish about us being able to do it, because I think India is right in the crosshairs of all of those issues. By definition, India is significant. This is a sixth of the world's population that is here, right? The changes that are going to happen here, I think, can show us in the rest of the world how we move forward and what we do. And a couple of areas I just want to point out. There are things like infrastructure and resource effectiveness with energy and so forth. But I think 2 of the most fundamental areas of change are actually going to be on the reskilling area. We have to figure this out, given the demographic advantage that we have, and that means we're going to have to rethink how we do education. Why does it take 16 years to make a doctor? Why? Who said that has to be the rule of how it works? Who says you have to spend 2 years doing a MBA? Who says you have to have a university degree to join a firm like ours? Why is that a rule? Why do we put kids in school behind a desk for 16 years and assume that that's the way we work it? I keep a picture in my New York office of the first kindergarten, which was in 1882. Bismarck invented the kindergarten in Germany because he was worried about a technological change. That was moving people from agriculture into industry. So they came up with kindergartens. If you look at the kindergarten from that period of time, well over 150 years ago, and compare it to what an average kindergarten looks like in Manhattan, the only difference you see is one has carbon fiber desks and the other has wooden desks. And that's, to me, we have to rethink how we're going to educate. And I think I'm excited by the prospect here in what we do, because that will be the way it is. And we're going to have to think about lifelong learning. It won't be we stuff all our education into the first 25 years of our life. This is going to be a ongoing capability that we're going to need to be able to have. The second area is the frugal innovation that Rana, you mentioned. When I think about healthcare and what needs to be done, I think the solution to the healthcare problems that we have in the West will be solved here. We're going to learn how to do it here, and then we're going to export that back into the other parts of the world. It's going to happen. Just given the scale and the innovation, the technology, and the chance to challenge orthodoxies, we're going to see innovation at a scale that we have never seen before. And finally, I just think there's this notion again about, with disruption, with the average clock speed of the world going up, with the average lifetime of an S&P 500 company going from 90 years to 15 years, all of us are going to have to be comfortable challenging our basic orthodoxies, all of them except our values. Every single one of those orthodoxies needs to be challenged. And this is a country that has the history, it has the leadership, it has the leaders to be able to lead us in how we do this fundamental transformation that we're all going to need to do over the next 15 years. Thank you very much.